Welcome to the Upshot. I'm Huntsville Mayor Tommy Battle. Our program this week will take a deeper look into the Huntsville Police Department. Citizens often have lots of questions about how the police function today, how we're different from other communities. Joining me today is Police Chief Mark McMurray and Captain Dewayne McCarver. Welcome to the Upshot, and we're so glad you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Chief and I have been at a couple of community meetings this past week, and there's some common questions that come out of those community meetings. And one of the first questions was, when we go out, and I guess Friday a week ago, we graduated a class of 21 cadets who became police officers. What was the starting? How did we start? How did we recruit those officers? What was the makeup of that class? But what was the process they went through to actually get to be chosen to be one of the 21?
Well, Mayor, it's a lengthy process, takes many months, sometimes up to half a year to finish. It starts off with around 1,000 applicants. Human Resources will test those individuals using a standardized nationwide test. That'll remove about half of them. Then they go to a physical agility test. They go through a psychological examination to see their fitness.
Through a full psychological examination?
Absolutely. It's a written exam to begin with. If their scores are not according up to national standards, then they have to go see a professional counselor and explain their scores, and usually it washes them out at that level. They'll have to come back and retest another year.
Good. And when you get down to the final, I guess we got down to 21. We started off with how many, 1,000?
Started out with 1,000. We ended up with around, when they get to me, my command staff and I look over approximately 150 that we go for interviews. And when they get through the oral interviews, then we do polygraph checks on them. And so then they have to go to a full physical exam with one of our doctors, medical examination. So it's a lengthy process. There's a lot of testing involved.
Good. And this latest class, I think we had 21. What was the makeup of the class?
Well, it's 61% minority, which is we were shooting for a very diverse group. This was the most diverse academy we've had yet. So 61% minority. We had 21 total individuals to finish. 11 of those were minority. And that brings our entire department up to the most diverse level it's ever been.
Now, Captain McCarver, you're head of the South Precinct. You've got some of those young cadets down there now. What's the process that they go through once they go from cadet to probationary officer?
I kind of want to back up just a little bit, because when they're in the academy, during that entire process, all of the training that they're doing, those academy instructors are continuously looking for things that may be a problem, any indicators that may show that we have somebody who's maybe not up to par, either psychologically or just in the way that we feel like they may deal with people. There may be times where we back them up and do additional training in certain areas if we see weaknesses. So it's a continual process, because during that academy session we're really learning about each individual that we've now selected to be a police officer, and we're getting to know them better, trying to figure out where we need to fine-tune them individually and working to better them. Then when they get into the field, they're assigned to a field training officer. Those
FTO, right?
Correct.
I got the acronym down.
That's right. Those field training officers have gone through extensive training themselves on just how to watch for those indicators, the things that are going to be sort of that the red light that's telling us we've got a problem. They score them every day. They score them extensively. The FTOs sometimes spend an additional hour per day just documenting what we've seen and the type of behavior we're seeing out of each one of these recruits. So it's an in-depth process. It begins at the date we begin to look to hire them until we finally get them through the entire field training officer program, where we have a long history of documentation as to just what type of person we believe we're finally putting into that car by themselves as a final product.
When they finally get into the car by themselves, how long has it been through that process?
That's nearly a year, 9 months to a year, each trainee, because like I say, some of those trainees will receive some remedial training. So that will lengthen their process, because we do it, we individualize it to a good degree. So each of those cadets some of them may spend more time on the street. So it can range between 9 months and a year.
Now, as we go through the training, and I think that's one of the most important things, once we hire somebody, we put them through lots of training, and it's 18 weeks worth of training. What kind of courses do they go through?
Well, we have a multitude of courses, everything from verbal defense,
Verbal
officer.
judo, is that verbal judo?
That's
as they
right.
call it?
And a lot of what that is just learning how to de-escalate situations. A lot of times we have officers who go onto these calls that they're very amped up. The people they're dealing with are angry. They may be under the influence of drugs or alcohol, and we train the officers on what tactics to use verbally to try to bring them down, to keep a situation from getting out of control. We spend time on just that officer violator, we call it contact, tactical disengagement, where an officer may find himself or herself into a situation where it's really more than they can handle even physically, and how to properly disengage and go to a different tool or a different method in order to try to find a better resolution to that bad situation. We spend time on non-felony traffic stops, which is just your standard traffic stop, what you think of as a traffic stop. Stress management. We spend a lot of time teaching the officers how to deal with the stresses that they deal with. They spend a lot of time out there dealing with some of the worst situations that our society has to offer. So we spend time teaching them how to deal with that, how to cope with that, and to understand when there may be a problem. We make sure they understand how to reach out for help if it hasn't been noticed or been called out maybe by a supervisor. Handling the emotionally or mentally disturbed. They get a lot of training on that.
You didn't used to have to have that. You would usually just pick up the mentally disturbed, take them to the hospital or something, but now it seems like society has left that in the hands of police.
You're absolutely right. A lot of things have been left into the hands of the police now, but that is one. It's a very tough situation that nobody else seems to want to do much about, and the police are left dealing with that. And so, of course, to be effective and efficient and responsible, we provide the training to help those officers deal with it correctly. So we end up in the best situation and the best outcomes that we can end up with. We certainly spend a lot of time with cultural diversity. We have Huntsville's an amazing and wonderful city with a wide array of people from all walks of life and all parts of this world. We teach them how to treat them the same whether they speak a different language or a different color skin tone or a different sex or race in general, or speak a different language. How we deal with each of those. We spend a lot of time making sure that officers understand, everyone's not just like you. Everyone wasn't raised just like you. So those are important things that we spend time teaching our officers. Civil rights. We spend time teaching them that one of the biggest jobs we have is to protect the constitutional and civil rights of the people we serve, regardless of whether or not they're saying something that the officer agrees with or wants to hear. It doesn't matter. Our job is to protect those rights. We spend a lot of time on community relations, how to get out there, how to really involve the community with the police, how to just get to know them as people and realize that we're all people. It doesn't matter, again, what race, color, language. We're all just people, and it's important to care about them all. And then we do spend a lot of time on our scenario training, judgment. That's a lot of what's going on in the world today. Did this officer make the right judgment call? Could he have used a different tool or a different de-escalation method to come out to have a better outcome on a situation? Officers are really second-guessed on that a lot, and we realize that. It's a tough call. So we spend a lot of time putting them through scenarios, watching how they react, watch how they handle it, and then that's where we get back into the remedial training. Sometimes we see officers are making maybe some bad judgment calls, and we want to put them back and run them through those again and see if we can't teach them to make better decisions. So those are just some of the things that we teach and work on at the Police Academy.
It's a lot of things to be taught in 18 weeks, isn't it?
It is.
Chief, even after they get out of the academy, we have continuing education. Tell me about some of the continuing education that we do.
Well, that's one of the unique things about our academy. Since 1972, we've been training our own here. There's only a few academies in the state of Alabama. So we have an opportunity to fashion our academy to our individual community needs. We always meet the Alabama Police Officer Standard and Training Commission standards, but a normal police officer is only required for 12 hours of recertification a year. We go way beyond that. We start at 40 hours a year. So that's an entire week we spend out of their year retraining them according to what my commanders and I feel like is a national trend or where we see weaknesses in our program. For instance, one year we brought in an instructor from Asha Quran, a Muslim local outreach group here, who taught our officers that when you speak to people of the Muslim faith, they're completely different. Their faith requires that their women be treated differently than American women. And we didn't really understand that until we had this type of dialogue that went on with them. And that is a growing community here in Huntsville too. So it helped us to help them when we go to their houses and answer calls.
So you never get finished with training, do you?
No, sir. And that's as you see, Dewayne McCarver spent a part of his career in training. He was actually assigned to the training academy, and so he is an excellent resource for us.
Good. Now, Captain McCarver, somebody's driving down the road, and this was a question that was asked time and time again. It was kind of interesting. All of a sudden, they noticed blue lights behind them. Number one, do they have to stop right there where they are if they don't feel comfortable about it? And number two, what should they do?
I really like this question. I get it a lot too. The thing that we just ask people to do is just take a minute and put yourselves into the officer's shoes. It's pretty evident whether or not somebody is running from that officer. A lot of times people say, well, I'm nervous. I don't know whether or not that's really a cop. I'd really like to get to a well-lit area maybe before I pull over. We encourage that. Our officers know when that car doesn't speed away, they're driving along. Maybe turn your turn signal on to let the officer know that you're looking for a spot to pull over. But that's a really good thing, and in fact, the officer appreciates that. The officer doesn't really want to pull over right there in the middle of the road or on the side of the road where he or she is in even more danger from traffic. So yes, to pull into a well-lit area, pull over into a parking lot. And then once you do that, I can tell you from my experience that I really appreciate it when they turn on that interior light, that dome light. Every officer's thankful when they see that. And to just simply keep their hands maybe on the steering wheel. If you see the person's hands, it's very comforting. You know they can't shoot you when their hands are in sight. So those are some of the simple things that people can do to really make the officer's job a lot easier. And when they do those things, it's just human nature. As the officer approaches and he or she sees those things occurring, well, the officer is going to already have a feel that this is not such a tense situation. They can already see, and it will definitely make for a much better contact situation between the officer and the citizen.
How many interactions will an officer have in a shift? If it's an 8-hour shift and he's driving along, 8, 10, 15?
Each shift is different for sure, but to have 10 to 20 contacts in a shift is certainly, I would put right down the median of the number of times that they do it every day.
Wow. You take that number of shifts and that number of people working, and you have thousands and thousands of shifts. I mean, in the mayor's office, we hear very few times we hear about complaints. But every once in a while, we do have a complaint. Every time we have one, we ship it over to Chief. Chief ships it downstream. Chief, how do we handle complaints? If somebody has a complaint about what an officer did?
Well, Mayor, I think one of the best tools we put together for accountability of our officers was our in-car video, where we audio and video record the officers, and now we have the addition of the body cameras. So 97% of every complaint that's filed against our officers, whether it's for rudeness or even for a crime, they took money out of my wallet, they didn't give me my license back. We review the tapes. We call them back up there and say, when I actually sign a letter to those complainants and give them what happened, the resolution. This is what really happened, and we have the tape. Would you like to come see the tape? And most of the time they realize that, well, maybe I had something to do with that too. Maybe I could have done something different. They said no. But when they do come see the tape, it changes their mind and they realize, okay, I understand what really happened now, because their perception was real to them. But that wasn't exactly the way it happened. And that's the way it is with the officer too, because his perception is one way and that citizen's perception is another. And those cameras validate and they build a trust. And about 3% of the time, we see something there that we can do better. And we correct the officer and we instruct him better and we make corrections based on those type of situations. So I encourage that type of action. If you see an officer doing something that you feel like is inappropriate, doesn't have to be illegal, just maybe inappropriate. We're very proud to wear this badge and to serve the community. And when they see something that is questionable, we do need to know about it. And now we have the tools to actually perform at a higher level.
So if they had a problem with something that they saw out there, they would start with internal affairs, probably go file a complaint with internal affairs, or write you or write me, and then we'll ship it down and it'll go through internal affairs. Or, you know, if they don't feel comfortable with that, they want to talk to somebody. I think you mentioned the other night they could even go to the legal department of the city.
If they're not comfortable talking to a police or internal affairs division, city legal could talk to them and direct them through that complaint process as well. So there's all types of avenues. We are going to put it right to the first line supervisor. We have every 9 to 15 officers has an immediate supervisor that works the street with them. So we're highly supervised. Even though they ride out there on the streets by themselves, those supervisors are out there mingling with them, and they're jumping calls, and they're out there on the street with them.
Captain McCarver, one of the things I keep hearing time and time again, and you look at it and say, wow, this is really professionalism. We seem to police ourselves many times.
Yes, and that's, you know, I'm extremely proud of our department, and this is probably the main reason. When I started here, you know, I'm just going to be completely forthright with you. When I started this career, we weren't pushed the way we are today. We weren't led exactly the way we are today. And you know, the circumstances around the country have sort of dictated to some degree that change. But what I'm very proud of is over the last 10 to 15 years, our department has really developed a culture from within that we are proud of doing things the right way. You know, you'll see an officer, something that an officer may get overheated, get upset, get some situation get to that officer. Our officers immediately want to step in and say, hey, we don't do that. That's not the way we do things. We're really proud of that. We've had several situations over the last 5 to 7 years where officers have seen another officer do something that was not only unethical but illegal. And those officers immediately turned those people into supervisors, into internal affairs. We're very proud of the badge that we wear. We're very proud of the city. And we don't, that embarrasses us. That embarrasses the vast majority of the police officers I know. Mm-hmm. And we don't want to be around it. And our cops don't want to be around it here. And we will get rid of it, and we have a track record of doing that.
Now, Chief, you were just talking, our training is 40 hours. Our training goes way beyond what the state calls for and way beyond, I think even in our A-post and our cadet training, it goes way beyond. Does that make us, you know, not just that same department that you see out there with 5 or 10 officers, that us being a bigger police department, that we're able to do our job a little bit better?
Oh, absolutely. If you're going to be a police officer somewhere else in the state of Alabama, you actually have to go away and attend a 13-week training academy at some distant location with a group of individuals that you'll not be working the streets with. What we start out with is we start out from basic training, and instead of 13 weeks, we start out with 18 weeks, and we put you with your team, your officers, your supervisors. We teach you chain of command. We teach you local authority. We teach you everything you need to know to work and be a police officer. You will learn during that 18 weeks, and then we're going to hold you over for another 18 weeks and put you with multiple field training officers who will daily evaluate you, and you can't put a value on that kind of training. And it builds a sense of pride in all the officers. They actually earn the badge. It's not given to them easy. It's a whole lot more than just an application process. It's a learning and growth process.
I've been there many a morning, talked to the cadets after the first day, and they're a little bit wide-eyed as they come in, because they all of a sudden realize that they do have to earn that, and that it's not an easy job, and they need to learn how to do some things that most people don't ever have to do, don't ever have to touch with.
With our department as well, with that same thing, our academy is able to begin to teach what we expect right out of the gate. The other departments who have to send their trainees off to these state academies, those state instructors, they're not there to teach the values of our city. They're just teaching the basics. So when those cadets come out, they graduate and they come back to the cities where they are now going to police, they've heard all sorts of different views on the way policing will be done. With our department, we get to teach them from day one what we expect, how we expect them to behave, how we expect them to be professional, and I think that goes a long way for our department.
You know, we talk about the values that we have. Protect and serve is one of the things on every police car coming through, you know, and that's kind of what I call the mantra. But you were talking to me about the core values. Y'all wear them on your on your shoulders. Tell me about those core values.
Yeah, you know, core values, you know, a lot of businesses, the city of Huntsville, we have our mission statements. You hear mottos, those things. I believe that our department really pushes doing the things we do based on our core values. You know, I know that the commanders, the chief, you know, the leadership from the top down pushes those values. The things that we talk about are honesty, integrity, courage, professionalism, and my favorite is empathy, understanding what another person's going through. Doesn't matter what your day has been filled with, when you pull up on the next call, those people need your empathy, your understanding, and your care. And it's important that we care about each person. We're honest with not only the public, but with each other. That we have integrity. That's one of the biggest things that we see tarnish our badge over and over and over throughout the country is integrity. We push these core values. We talk about these core values. We often talk about how thick our directive manuals are. If you ever have the opportunity to look at the Huntsville Police Department's directive manuals, we have 2 gigantic books of rules we follow. But I tell the new cadets, I tell our officers, you know, if you just stick to the core values, I promise you, you're going to follow every one of those rules, because that's what our entire mission is based on, are those values. And if you follow those, you'll be just fine, and we'll all be proud to serve alongside any officer who upholds those values.
Now, Chief, you know, one of the things that came out at both meetings we had the other night, they said, well, why are you here now? Why aren't you here all the time? Why don't we have community policing? And you and I looked at each other, and it seems like every other night we're going to an event that involves community policing, whether it's neighborhood watch or community gatherings. Or talk a little bit about community policing to us.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I've learned over the past couple of weeks because of the unrest in the nation was there's a community here in Huntsville that's genuinely concerned over what is our state? Are we in this same period of unrest here in Huntsville? And if not, what makes this area different? A lot of people don't understand the uniqueness of Huntsville, Alabama, and what we do differently. Our level of training, our certification, the type of people we hire, it's not just for our police department. Our whole city government is structured in such a way that we have some of the finest. I mean, we don't look for just a year out, a 2-year out. We have a big plan for the city and growth in the future. That's why people come here. That's what makes us the most livable city in the country right now. It's the reason our city is growing when cities our size all over the state and the southeastern are shrinking. They're coming to here for our jobs and our opportunity. I was just talking to the Toyota manager today. We had him on a meeting, and we asked him that same question. Well, why are you expanding? They just doubled, and they're looking at doing it again. And I said, why Huntsville, Alabama? He said, this is the safest place we've ever been. We feel absolutely safe. When our guys get off shift at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, they leave here, they're safe going home. They're safe coming here. Nothing happens in North Huntsville up here where they're located. They love this place. They've never worked. And these people, actually, this plant manager who runs the security division for Toyota is from the Congo, South Africa. Wow. And he said this is the safest place he's ever been. He's been here for 11 years now, Mayor, and they're looking at expanding again. He made me proud of what these officers do out there every day by making that area so safe.
Captain McCarver, you got South Precinct.
Yes.
We have 3 precincts in Huntsville. We have South, West, and North, and each of them have different varying size. Let's see, South's about 75 square miles.
About 78 square miles, 83,000 residents within that boundary.
Wow. And then West is about 60 square miles, something like that.
Close, it's about 80.
Yeah, about 80 square miles, and then North is how many square miles?
Just under 50 square miles. Mm-hmm.
And so how, you know, and either one of y'all, how's the best way, why do we divide them up like that? We divide them up, as I understand, by calls of service.
Correct. Well, we divided, really a lot of it has to do with management, good management, and the ability to deploy resources where they're most effective. Mm-hmm. we have divided the boundaries such that there's basically 33 and a third % of the calls for service in each one of those boundaries. Then we can allocate the resources somewhat equally by doing that. And then that allows for the proper management, the proper supervision of the personnel. And it also allows a little more tailored service that way. If you just left it one giant department, we have different neighborhoods, different communities that have different needs. And in this way, it allows us to really sort of zone in on certain situations and problems so that we can offer the best service possible to our residents.
Community resource officers?
We have 2 community resource officers designated for each one of those precincts. They're a crucial link. I can't even begin to tell you how important those guys and women are when they go out and they really spearhead the effort to make sure that each precinct is truly in touch with the needs and really the heartbeat of all of the neighborhoods within those precinct boundaries. So they're very engaged with our civic associations, our neighborhood watches, our churches, our community centers. Mm-hmm. They know what's going on. They know that they're a immediate resource for those communities, and they really channel the information back into the precinct so there again we can turn around and deploy our resources properly.
Good.
The response we have been able to set up through the city government here is like no other city. For instance, Mayor, if a person has a problem with the neighbor putting their garbage can in front of their house, who responds to something? Whose responsibility is that actually? Well, the way we do
I think it's the mayor's job.
it is yours. So what?
Pass it to the city council member.
Well, then you're a genius because what you've done is set up like a See-Click-Fix account. It's a website. Anyone can go to it. Huntsville Connect.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So citizens go to there and they say, hey, my neighbor is putting his dirty underwear on my fence and will not quit it. And so you just type it in and touch it, and when it gets to your office, you send it automatically to the division in the city of Huntsville, whether it's zoning or planning or Huntsville Police. It may be a pothole. Take a picture of the pothole and send it to See-Click-Fix. It goes straight to that division, and immediately, usually within 24 hours, somebody in this city government is responding. And the reason that's so important is because as trivial as some things seem to the other person, when they occur to you, it's the most important thing in your life. And that's what Captain McCarver is talking about, empathy. These little problems and issues are the most important thing in their life. And when we're responsive to them, we may not solve them, but the very fact that we respond to them and we show them we care and we're trying to make it, that's community policing, but it's also responsive government. And that's why Huntsville's different from a lot of cities.
And a lot of what we do isn't necessarily always crime related. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of times we're just trying to improve the quality of life of the people in our city. So that's a lot of what those
to be good neighbor every once in a while.
And so you talk about, you kind of chuckle at the underwear over the fence, but really sometimes those things, of course, it's not necessarily a crime. Nobody has to go to jail, but sometimes when we can send an officer, a community relations officer who's trained in that, to just talk. We make neighbors like neighbors again sometimes with those guys. They're very good at what they do. So the police officer's role is very broad, and it doesn't always have to do with just crime. So.
Interacting with the community is one of the most important things I think that we can do, because we do it with school resource officers. They're sitting in the schools, they're talking to students on a day-to-day basis, they're mentoring, they're coaching, they're trying to talk to them and let them get to know police before they get out of school, so that they know that the police are there to help them. We do a lot of other programs that are made to interact our police with the community. Chief, I remember we were up north at we had a big fair up there, really, and had it up there for all the citizens, and we mix with them. What else do we do? Just kind of go over some of the highlights.
2,000 citizens in North Huntsville came to that North Precinct block party with Captain Rice, and that was a huge event. We also do Halloween at all of the precincts every year. We have a Bikes or Bust program where we buy hundreds of bicycles at Christmas for children, for school. Right now we're doing a school program for the teenagers, backpacks, store backpacks, back to school. We do that every single year. So we have
Night out.
National Night Out's
National
coming
Night
up
Out.
in August. If you've never been to National Night Out, you're missing something, because it's more than free food. It's hundreds of booths and presentations on how to make your home safer, your business safe, your community. And of course, our most successful program has got to be Community Watch. We have 10,000 citizens who are filtering through our community resource officer who talk to each other on software like Nextdoor, where communities can actually share common problems that are going on up and down their street. And that kind of communication is then filtered to a community resource officer, and we can go out and adjust and tweak these little communities, and that kind of communication lets us know what's going on.
And you have breakfast with the chief?
I do. So many times all year
Just
long.
went 2 days ago, I went to one, and you had 3 long tables full at one of the local restaurants, full of people who just wanted to talk to the chief and talk to officers and see what was going on.
Interesting conversations there. Very pleasant. Come out and share with us the successes and where we can do a little bit better.
You know, Captain McCarver, you're kind of down there in the streets with the guys and everything else, since you're handling the precinct and everything else. Sometimes we're called on to use force. And tell me about the escalation in force and everything else. I know we work very hard to keep from getting to that last result of the deadly force.
Right. Well, you know, what we have is we used to have a term. We used to term it escalating force. We really don't use that terminology anymore, because what happened is we realized that over time, when we use that term per se, that officers believed that they had to start at a point and then they needed to move up this ladder per se. What we teach our officers is to use whatever force is appropriate and necessary for the situation, and every situation is vastly different. The wording is objectively reasonable for the circumstance, but the biggest thing here is that we want our officers to go home. We want them to go back to their families just as much as we want everyone else to go back to their families.
That's their biggest wish at the start of each day, is to go home to their family.
That's right. And so our training, everything we do when it comes to the use of force, has to do with really 2 things: the officer going home, and believe it or not, the offender or the other person involved, we want them to go home too. You know, just because we have to use force doesn't mean that we want it to have a negative outcome. Sometimes we just have to use force to affect the job that we have to affect. There's often no way around it. You know, I tell a lot of friends, people that I know, you know, violence is not pretty. And our police officers are put into the situation where they have no choice. They have to live in a violent world sometimes. And we teach them, and we try to give them the tools necessary to have those encounters, but with the least damage or injury to either themselves or an offender.
Chief, you just went to tasers. You came to me, said we'd like to use tasers, and we'd like to have tasers as a tool to use, and I asked you why. And tell me.
I think we save more citizens. It's unfortunate that 80% of the people we lock up in jail today are either drug and alcohol or mentally ill patients. And a lot of times people just need medication, and they lead a fine life as long as they stay on this medication. But when they come off of it, how do you deal with somebody that's armed either with a knife or a sword, and they're mentally ill? You know, and I came to you with a compassionate plea of asking us for permission to use a level of force that is not pretty, but all it does is immobilize you. It basically stuns you for about 5 seconds and allows the officer the ability to put the handcuffs on you, where we can control you and get that treatment that you needed.
And you got tasered the other day, didn't you?
I stood up, yes, sir. I was the first one to stand in line. And, of course, there was a fight over who was going to get to shoot the chief. But they did shoot me. I took the 5-second ride to the ground, and I recovered in about 10 seconds. I got my temper back, and I was fine.
And have you been tasered?
Not yet. It's coming next week. But let me tell you this. I would like to thank both of you because I don't know if you've noticed I have half an ear on one side. That came from a confrontation in the street about 10 years ago. And that ear would still be there had we had tasers at the time. It was a very violent fight that I was in, and a guy bit it off. But I would have never been in that fight and then in that situation had I had a taser. So, you know, the officers on the street, and I think the public, it's doing a good thing for all of us to have those, and we appreciate you doing that.
And you had an occasion just this week, I think, our first time we had to use a taser, a gentleman
Chased
who
a
was
suspect.
somewhat mentally ill. Yeah.
Sure, and we actually chased him for a long time through some streets, and he was cornered, and he picked up a 20-pound cinder block and started charging the officer, which would kill the officer. And we're just fortunate enough that officer had a taser, and he was able to stun him. He dropped the brick, and we put him in cuffs, and he went right to jail for assault instead of attempted murder on an officer. We just charged him with assault. We got him some medication, and he's back. He's a citizen again. So these are the kind of success stories you're going to see more and more. We don't even have to shoot a taser. You can actually use them to stun people one-on-one. So sometimes passive resistance people can be prodded along. It's a pain compliance tool. So there's a whole variety of ways you can use this new tool in the levels of force without having to escalate and injuring somebody.
When we do have that sad time that we have to do a shooting, we have to shoot. We get down to the last resort and we have to shoot. What's the process after the shoot? What's the process that the citizens know that you know, we have looked at this, made sure it's in policy and all this other, tell me the steps that we take.
Well, immediately the officer is removed from service where we can evaluate the entire process. So we have a lot of evidence to go through at this point.
And you evaluate the officer too, right?
Absolutely. He will not be brought in for questioning for at least a day, sometimes 2 sleep cycles. But that apart, we have a job to do, and that is provide evidence to the public and to the victim here, which is the community at large, as to what exactly happened. So we'll review the videotape, the crime scene comes out, major crimes comes out, to see if maybe there was a crime committed by anyone. The entire process takes about 2 weeks, and then we go before what's called an incident review board. And it's a professional panel where all of the evidence is laid out. The videos are put up on the large screen. Reconstruction is shown of the entire diagram and how all the audio and video of the radio transmissions, the in-car video, everything's looked at. And in attendance on these boards are citizens from our citizen advisory. It's a police advisory review panel.
Sure, I appoint a member, each council member appoints a member.
Yes, sir. And so they actually respond to the citizens of Huntsville and provide a citizen oversight just to make sure and clarity that our rules and regulations, state law is compliant, the district attorney is in attendance, the city attorneys are in attendance. Everything is reviewed to see if we complied with state law and HPD policies and procedures as well.
Good, good. Listen, guys, you know, this is a time, and it seems like there's unrest in the nation and everything. You know, from our 2 meetings, you know, it's pretty obvious there's a segment of the society that is scared of law enforcement. There's another segment who, you know, I think the whole segment, I think everybody is just so thankful that you are there and that you're there to kind of keep a thin blue line against the things that can happen, the anarchy, and keep us safe and make sure that we stay safe every day. To those who have fear in their heart, what would you say to them?
Well, it requires that level of empathy from both sides. We have to understand our role is to, we don't judge people. We really don't. People think we get out here and judge people on their actions. We hold them accountable, if you'd like to say that. We will actually take them before a judge or a magistrate, and they will judge their actions. But that's our job. That's our sworn oath, to uphold the laws of the Constitution of the United States and the states of Alabama. That is what we swore. You swore us in, Mayor, to do that. We take that oath very serious. So when we see a crime broken, we have to deal with it right then. We have to. What's the best course of action to take? Sometimes it's a case report. Sometimes it's a document what happened. Sometimes it's a medical treatment situation, and we can go that route. But sometimes, if it's too violent, and we have to incarcerate that person, take them to jail, at which case they will be taken before a judge, and they'll be held accountable in one way or other through the legal system for their actions.
I'd like to add, if you don't mind, that you know, we have a country here with 700,000 cops in it. I feel strongly that the vast majority of all of those police officers go to work each day with the intentions of doing the right thing. You know, I cannot speak for every community in every city in this country, but I can speak for the city of Huntsville. And I can tell you that the police officers in this city that I've worked with my whole career, they care about people. And if we find that we have an officer that doesn't care about people and doesn't want to do the right thing, we get rid of them. We don't want them working side by side with us. But having said that, there are times when one of those gets through. There are times when those body cameras show us we've found we may have a problem. There may be an officer who should not be on this police force. And we take great pride in ridding our department of such a thing. But on the other side of that, what we are finding is that our officers are doing a tremendous job.
They are.
We've been very, very thankful. These cameras have been really, really great. We're finding out we have some of the most professional, the most well-trained cops that you could imagine. And so, you know, what I would like to say to the citizens of this city is that they're lucky. We're very proud. We're lucky as a police department to get to work for such a wonderful city, but they're also lucky because they have a lot of fantastic cops that really want to do the right thing, and they care every day. But they're people. They make mistakes. We all do. But if it's a mistake that was just a mistake, we fix that. We work with that. We retrain. And when we find the bad apples that don't need to be out there, we get rid of them. And we encourage them to let us know if they see something that we need to look at. But in the meantime, we're thankful, and we think we have a fantastic department.
You know, 2 weeks ago, let's go back to the start where we swore in 21 cadets. It was the day after Dallas shooting. 5 officers had been killed in Dallas. And I had to tell those cadets it was very hard to say congratulations to you today because you're going into a tough field, and it is a tough field. But also, it's not hard at all to say thank you, because the job that they do to serve and protect, the job that they do out there on a day-to-day basis, the time they're away from their family, a lot of holidays, a lot of birthdays that will be missed and everything else, they're out there doing a job because to them it's a service to society. And to each of them, I said thank you. And to you too today, I say thank you for the job that you do, and thank you for the job that you do every day for the city of Huntsville, because you are the ones that make a difference in this community. And I appreciate the job that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
And to each of y'all, thank you for joining me today. I'm Mayor Tommy Battle. We'll see you next time on The Upshot.